Never underestimate me when I walk away, from an overlooked employee to a leader facing unexpected, and then. I sat at the long table surrounded by my team, their laughter filling the air like a soundtrack to a night I thought was mine. 7 years. 7 years I had given everything to that company. Countless late nights, emergency saves, and endless mentoring of new hires who never seemed to stay long enough to truly understand the work. I wasn't just another employee. I was the foundation they all leaned on, the one Mark, my boss, assured me was next in line for something bigger. Just last month, he had told me, "Keep this up, Rachel, and the senior manager title is yours." I clung to those words like a lifeline, replaying them in my head over and over, letting them build the hope that tonight's celebration would finally crown my efforts. Mark stood at the head of the table, raising his glass to quiet the chatter, the air thick with anticipation. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it, and I fought to steady the tremor in my hands as I waited for him to say my name. He smiled, that familiar confident smile that made me believe in possibilities, and began speaking in a tone that promised recognition and reward. "Tonight, I want to highlight someone who has been an incredible asset to this company, someone whose dedication and leadership have gone above and beyond." My grip tightened around my glass as he scanned the room, eyes landing not on me, but on Emily, the fresh-faced 24-year-old I had personally trained from day one. The woman who barely knew the client systems before I spent weeks showing her every detail. I could feel the breath catch in my throat, disbelief blooming into a knot of anger and hurt as Mark praised her creativity and energy, announcing her promotion to senior manager. The applause erupted around me like a thunderstorm, but inside, everything went quiet and still. I forced a smile, raised my glass, and joined in the toasts, my voice strained and brittle as I congratulated Emily on the promotion I had spent years chasing. Mark caught my eye and winked, as if to say, "See, Rachel, this is how things work." Then came the polite pat on the head, the words that stabbed sharper than any knife. "You've been such a valuable team player. We all appreciate your dedication." Team player. The phrase echoed in my mind like a cruel joke, a reminder that my loyalty meant little and my worth was measured only by how well I followed orders. I swallowed hard, pretending to laugh along with the others while the humiliation settled deep inside me, a slow-burning fire I could neither extinguish nor ignore. That night, alone in my apartment, the rage simmered beneath the surface, but I knew I had to act with calm precision. The disappointment was sharp, but fear was gone. I opened my laptop and began drafting the words I never thought I'd say: resignation. I typed slowly, savoring the finality in each sentence. "Dear Mark, please accept this as my formal resignation, effective immediately." It felt like a liberation, a step toward reclaiming the respect I deserved. I pressed send and closed the laptop with a sense of quiet resolve, knowing that on Monday, the world I had known would shift beneath my feet. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. Instead, I was ready to watch the consequences unfold. Monday morning arrived with the usual hum of activity, but the atmosphere had already changed before I stepped through the glass doors of Holston and Company. The receptionist's usual bright smile faltered as she registered my presence, and whispers quickly spread like wildfire. I moved deliberately, letting the silence and curious glances trail behind me like a shadow. I passed Emily near the coffee station. Her cheerful "Morning, Rachel" felt forced and hollow, her new senior manager badge glinting mockingly under the fluorescent lights. I smiled politely, masking the storm of emotions beneath the surface. Emily hesitated, then turned away quickly, sensing something unspoken in my expression. I settled at my desk, methodically organizing files and responding to emails, careful to maintain the appearance of composure even as my heart pounded with the knowledge that today was a turning point. Just as I was finishing up a set of project reports that would soon belong to someone else, Mark's office door swung open abruptly, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Rachel, my office." Now, heads lifted over cubicle walls, coffee cups paused mid-sip. I smoothed the front of my blouse, stood with deliberate calm, and walked toward his office as if I were heading toward victory rather than confrontation. The door clicked shut behind me, and I found Mark sitting behind his desk, the resignation letter spread out neatly before him. The smug confidence I had seen at the party was gone, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty and anger. "You're resigning?" His voice was low, incredulous, almost disbelieving. I nodded, folding my hands in my lap, keeping my gaze steady. "Effective immediately." He leaned forward, shaking his head slowly, trying to comprehend. Rachel, this is sudden. Why? We didn't even talk about this. I gave a quiet, almost amused laugh. We didn't talk about Emily's promotion either, but here we are. His jaw tightened, irritation slipping through his carefully maintained composure. That wasn't personal. She simply outperformed you. I tilted my head, voice steady. After 4 months? You really believe that? He tapped the letter with his pen, harder than necessary, as if trying to puncture the truth. You've been here 7 years. You're important to this team. I don't want to lose you. I searched his eyes for sincerity, found none, only fear. You don't want to lose me? I echoed softly. Yet you had no problem overlooking me for a promotion I earned. No problem humiliating me in front of everyone. No problem telling me to learn from someone I trained. His mouth opened slightly, but I cut him off. You made your choice, Mark. And I've made mine. He exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of his desk, as if steadying himself. Maybe I made mistakes. Maybe I should have handled things differently. But resigning without warning isn't the smartest move. I smiled without warmth. I sent that email Friday night. If I were emotional, I would have stormed out then. But I waited. Now, I'm leaving on my terms. His eyes narrowed, the calculating look of a man used to control. So what's your plan? Run to one of our competitors? Don't forget you signed a non-compete. I laughed softly, standing. Oh, Mark, I don't need to run to a competitor. Someone else already saw my value. His gaze darkened. Who? I leaned in. David, the former COO you pushed out last year. He offered me a director-level position months ago. I declined, until Friday night changed everything. I met his stunned expression head-on. I called him after the party. I accepted. Silence hung between us. Finally, he asked, You're leaving for David's firm? I nodded. I start next Monday. His shoulders stiffened, the confidence cracked. Rachel, be reasonable. We can work something out. Talk. I shook my head. No, this is final. As I reached the door, I paused and glanced back. It's funny how people only see your worth when you're walking away. Then I left him with the consequences and didn't look back. Outside his office, the floor was eerily quiet. Every pair of eyes was on me. The stolen glances, the subtle shifts in posture. I returned to my desk with measured steps, letting the silence envelop me. No one spoke. Not yet. I sat down, opened my laptop, and sent a clear, professional resignation email to the leadership team. Seconds later, whispers spread like wildfire. Rachel resigned. For real. The news traveled fast, but I didn't need to fan the flames. I packed my belongings with quiet determination, folding sweaters, sliding photos into boxes, unplugging chargers. Each motion deliberate, unhurried. Then Sarah appeared, one of the few I respected here, eyes wide and voice low. Rachel, is it true? I met her gaze and smiled. Yeah, it's time. She sighed. I get it after Friday, but I didn't think you'd actually leave. I glanced toward Mark's office, door firmly shut. Neither did he. She laughed softly. He's an idiot. Everyone knows you deserve that promotion. Around us, coworkers pretended to busy themselves, but the tension was palpable. Even Emily peeked nervously, her eyes flicking between me and Mark's closed door. For a moment, she seemed like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. And honestly, I didn't care anymore. Don't worry, I told Sarah. I'll be fine. She nodded, her expression softening. Good for you. Within hours of my resignation becoming public, the atmosphere at Holston and Company began to unravel faster than anyone could have predicted. Words spread like wildfire among clients and colleagues, and the cracks in the foundation that I had held together for years started to widen dangerously. Emily, now thrust into a role she was unprepared for, struggled visibly to keep pace with the demands that had once been second nature to me. I kept in close contact with Sarah, who remained at the company and became my unofficial informant, sharing every tense meeting, every panic call, and every whispered rumor about the chaos engulfing Mark's empire. Each update painted a clearer picture of just how much they had depended on me and how ill-equipped they were to fill the void I left behind. From my new office at David's startup, a light-filled space overlooking the Chicago skyline, I watched as Holston faltered, clients drifting away and investor confidence evaporating overnight. David welcomed me with a quiet confidence, immediately entrusting me with key projects and giving me the space to lead without interference. It was a stark contrast to the suffocating environment I had escaped. As clients started reaching out, many asking if I could continue consulting for them independently, I realized my departure had a domino effect I hadn't fully anticipated. I hadn't stolen a single client. They chose to follow the person they trusted, the one who had been the true anchor all along. It wasn't revenge. It was a natural consequence of years of neglect and disrespect by a leadership blinded by arrogance. Sarah's messages became lifelines, each one revealing more about the growing panic within Holston's walls. Mark, once so sure of his control, was now desperate, making frantic calls, pushing for emergency meetings, and trying to stabilize a sinking ship. Emily was drowning in responsibility without the support or experience needed to succeed. I could almost see the pressure weighing on her, the forced smiles that masked a growing fear. The company was unraveling, piece by piece, and every message from Sarah reminded me that my absence was not just noticed, but deeply felt. I resisted the urge to gloat, focusing instead on the fresh start I was building, knowing the cracks in the old world would only grow larger. Despite the chaos, Mark continued to try to lure me back, sending messages that felt more like pleas than offers. The idea that I could be bought back with money or title felt almost laughable now. When I finally responded, it was with calm professionalism, making it clear I was committed to my new path. The difference was palpable. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing recognition. I already had it. My value was no longer a secret or a promise, but a reality recognized by everyone who mattered. The weight of years spent proving myself was lifted, replaced by the quiet confidence of someone finally in control of her own future. At the startup, the pace was intense but invigorating, and I thrived in an environment that valued collaboration over control. David's leadership was a refreshing change. He trusted me to lead, listen, and innovate without micromanagement or political games. Every day brought new challenges, but instead of fighting for respect, I was given the tools and support to succeed. Watching the firm grow, seeing clients respond positively to our approach, I realized how much of my potential had been stifled before. This was more than a job. It was a second chance to prove what leadership truly meant, and I was determined to make the most of it. As weeks passed, the stories from Holston became more dramatic. Sarah described how investors were growing impatient, how board members whispered about Mark's inability to maintain control, and how key clients began quietly signing contracts elsewhere. Emily's confidence crumbled under the weight of expectations she wasn't ready for, and I felt a pang of sympathy despite everything. I knew what it was like to be overlooked and underestimated, and I hoped she would find her own path through the storm. But the truth was clear. No amount of fresh ideas could replace the experience and dedication I had poured into that place. Holston was unraveling, and its downfall was the natural result of leadership that refused to see its own mistakes. Amid the chaos, I found unexpected solace in the support from new colleagues who recognized my worth without hesitation. They asked questions, sought my advice, and respected my insights in a way that felt both familiar and new. Every success at the startup was a reminder that my value wasn't tied to a title or a company, but to the work I did and the people I supported. I began mentoring others with the same care I had once given Emily, determined to build a culture where no one felt invisible or disposable. The contrast between my old life and this new one couldn't have been more stark. Here, I was seen, heard, and truly valued. Sarah's updates were bittersweet, a constant reminder of the world I left behind crumbling under poor leadership. The board's growing dissatisfaction with Mark culminated in emergency meetings and quiet demands for change. Rumors of client departures turned into confirmed losses, and the company's reputation took a severe hit. Meanwhile, my own reputation soared as clients praised my leadership and ability to manage complex projects with grace and efficiency. It was a turning point, not just for me, but for the industry's perception of what true leadership looked like. I wasn't chasing anyone anymore. People were coming to me because they believed in what I could offer. The pressure on Mark intensified as the consequences of his decisions became impossible to ignore. His desperation was evident in every message Sarah relayed: threats to replace Emily, demands for quick fixes, and frantic attempts to secure client loyalty. But the damage was done. The trust that once held the company together had fractured beyond repair. I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that my choice to leave wasn't impulsive or petty. It was strategic, a refusal to stay where respect was conditional and loyalty was exploited. The world was watching, and for the first time, I was leading on my own terms. The sense of liberation I felt grew stronger with each passing day. I wasn't just building a new career. I was reclaiming my identity and setting a new standard for what it meant to be a leader. My success was no longer tied to someone else's approval, but to my own ability to inspire, support, and drive real change. The startup's rapid growth and client wins were proof that the foundation I had laid was solid and ready to support something greater. And as Holston struggled to survive without me, I knew I had made the right choice to walk away from a toxic environment and into a future where I could truly thrive. Despite the ongoing chaos at Holston, I stayed focused on the work ahead, building relationships and leading projects with renewed energy and purpose. Every challenge I faced at the startup was met with confidence born from hard-earned experience. The contrast with my old company couldn't have been more striking. Where Holston crumbled, we flourished. And as Sarah continued to update me on the downfall of my former workplace, I felt no bitterness, only a quiet affirmation that respect and recognition come to those who demand it, not those who wait for it. This was only the beginning of a new chapter, one where my value was finally acknowledged and my potential fully realized. Several weeks after I settled into my new role, I received a message from Mark asking for a meeting I knew was coming but still wasn't prepared for. The message was carefully worded, polite yet desperate, hinting at the possibility of reconciliation and offers to make things right. When the day arrived, I walked into the old company's lobby with a calmness that surprised even me, the past years of frustration tempered into focused determination. Mark's office door was slightly ajar, and when I stepped inside, the man who once seemed invincible now looked tired, defeated, and less sure of himself than I'd ever seen. His hands fidgeted nervously, and the cocky smirk I remembered was nowhere to be found. Instead, he wore a mask of vulnerability I hadn't expected to witness. He began the conversation without preamble, admitting that the company had underestimated my value and that things had spiraled out of control since my departure. Mark offered a substantial raise, a senior executive title, and full decision-making authority over my former department, all in an attempt to bring me back and stabilize the sinking ship he could no longer steer alone. For a moment, I listened, weighing his words, aware of the power I now held in this exchange. It was a far cry from the dismissive man who had so publicly undermined me just weeks earlier, and yet, no amount of money or title could erase the years of disrespect and humiliation. I met his gaze steadily, articulating clearly that my decision was never about money or status, but about respect and leadership that truly valued its people. I told him that true leadership meant recognizing and supporting those who build the company from the ground up, not humiliating them or sidelining their contributions in favor of fleeting appearances. Mark's expression darkened as he realized that his attempts to sway me with financial incentives were futile. I reminded him that it took 7 years for him to see my worth, and that he had squandered that time with arrogance and poor judgment. When I mentioned Emily's promotion after only 4 months and the patronizing remarks he made, his jaw tightened, but he offered no real defense. I could see the flicker of regret, but it was too little, too late. I stood, smoothing my blazer, and calmly told him that the conversation was over. Before leaving, I paused at the door and delivered a final message meant to echo long after I was gone. The value of a company lies in the people who make it run, not the titles or the money they throw around. I left him with his regrets and the consequences of his choices, stepping back into a world where I controlled my own destiny. Walking away from Mark's office felt like shedding a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. The silence that followed my departure on the floor was deafening, filled with the realization that a power shift was underway. I knew that my leaving wasn't just a personal victory, but a symbol of change rippling through the company and the industry. In the days that followed, the consequences of Mark's missteps became impossible to ignore. The board's dissatisfaction reached a boiling point, and Mark was forced out in a boardroom decision that marked the end of his reign. Investors, shaken by the loss of key clients and the company's faltering reputation, pushed for new leadership and a fresh start. Emily's struggles to manage the chaos only underscored the gap between surface-level enthusiasm and real experience, further fueling the board's urgency for change. I watched the company unravel from a distance, a mixture of vindication and relief washing over me. The old world I left behind was collapsing, while my new world flourished on a foundation built with respect, trust, and genuine leadership. Back at the startup, my role expanded quickly as the company capitalized on opportunities my leadership opened up. Clients who once hesitated now sought out our expertise eagerly, impressed by the level of dedication and insight I brought to the table. David, the former COO who had believed in me from the start, trusted me to lead major projects and contribute to the company's strategic direction. The contrast between my new environment and the toxic culture I escaped was stark and refreshing. Here, people listened, valued input, and celebrated successes collectively rather than hoarding credit or playing political games. For the first time in years, I wasn't fighting to be heard. I was commanding attention through competence and respect. As Holston's reputation declined, I found myself invited to industry events and networking sessions, often introduced as the game changer who revitalized projects and brought clients along with her. It was surreal to witness how my personal journey had become a professional triumph that others admired. Sarah remained a vital connection, sharing insights and offering encouragement as the company adjusted to a postmark reality. Though the past still echoed in my mind, I focused on the future, mentoring others who faced the same challenges I once had. I wanted to ensure they wouldn't have to fight as hard for recognition or respect. Mark's absence left a power vacuum that created opportunities for new voices and ideas to emerge within Holston. The board brought in fresh leadership determined to rebuild trust with clients and investors. But the scars of past mismanagement ran deep. I kept an eye on their progress, curious to see if they would learn from the mistakes that had cost them so much. Meanwhile, my own firm grew steadily, fueled by a culture of transparency, collaboration, and genuine appreciation for hard work. Every success reaffirmed my belief that respect is the cornerstone of effective leadership, and that loyalty is earned through trust, not demanded through fear or manipulation. The most gratifying moments came when clients expressed relief and gratitude for the stability and integrity I brought to their projects. They weren't just signing contracts. They were investing in a partnership built on mutual respect and shared goals. This was the leadership I had longed for and now lived every day. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that leaving Holston was not just an escape. It was a necessary transformation that allowed me to reclaim my professional identity and thrive in a way I never thought possible. The power had shifted, and I was no longer waiting for permission or recognition. I was leading, creating, and shaping a future where respect was the foundation, not an afterthought. In the quiet moments, I sometimes wondered what might have been if Mark had seen my values sooner or treated me with the respect I deserved. But those thoughts quickly faded because the present demanded my full attention. I had built something new, something real, and I wasn't about to let old wounds dictate my future. Leadership wasn't about controlling others. It was about inspiring them to be their best, recognizing their worth before they had to prove it. I had learned that the hard way, and now I was determined to make sure no one on my team ever felt invisible or undervalued again. This was more than a career. It was a mission to redefine what it means to lead with integrity and empathy. Months passed since I left Holston and Company, and with each passing day, I felt myself settling deeper into a new life that finally felt right. The startup where I now worked had transformed from a fledgling idea into a thriving business, and I was proud to be at the heart of that growth. My role as director of operations was more than just a title. It was a recognition of the years of experience, dedication, and resilience I had brought to the table. Every morning, I walked into the office feeling energized and valued, surrounded by colleagues who believed in collaboration, respect, and genuine leadership. The culture was different here. It was built on trust, and I was no longer the invisible worker bee, but a respected leader shaping the future. Sarah, who had been my steady ally during the chaos at Holston, was now a trusted partner in the company's expansion efforts. Her sharp insight and unwavering support made navigating the challenges of growth manageable and even exciting. Together, we worked to create an environment where new hires felt supported and recognized, where their efforts were celebrated rather than ignored. I remembered how it felt to be overlooked and underestimated, and I was determined to ensure that no one on my team ever experienced the same disappointment. Building that culture wasn't just good business sense. It was personal, a way to rewrite the story I had lived through. Meanwhile, news from Holston trickled in less frequently, but when it did, it was always a reminder of just how far I had come. Mark's departure left the company scrambling for stability, and while new leadership tried to patch the broken pieces, the damage ran deep. I heard about emergency board meetings, client losses, and attempts to salvage a reputation that had been shattered by years of neglect. Despite their efforts, Holston struggled to regain footing in a competitive market that now viewed it as unstable and unreliable. Each report reinforced my conviction that leadership without respect is doomed to fail, and the industry was watching as a cautionary tale unfolded before their eyes. At the startup, our success attracted attention from clients and competitors alike. Our approach, centered on transparency and mutual respect, was refreshing in an industry often marked by cutthroat tactics and broken promises. I was invited to speak at conferences and participate in panels discussing leadership, company culture, and the importance of valuing employees as the greatest asset. It was surreal to go from being the overlooked team player to a recognized voice shaping conversations about what modern leadership should look like. These opportunities felt like validation, proof that my experience and insights had not only been earned, but were now valued and influential. One afternoon, as I prepared for a leadership roundtable, David caught me in the hallway and asked if I had a moment to talk. His smile was genuine, and the way he spoke about the progress we'd made was infused with pride. "Rachel," he said, "you've been a game changer. The growth we've seen is thanks to your vision and dedication." Hearing those words from someone I respected so deeply was incredibly gratifying. It reminded me that leadership is not about titles or control, but about inspiring others and driving real change. I felt a renewed sense of purpose and belonging, something I had longed for during my years at Holston. Despite the professional success and personal fulfillment, I remained grounded in the lessons learned from my past struggles. I continued mentoring younger colleagues, sharing not just strategies for success, but also stories about resilience and standing up for oneself in toxic environments. I wanted to empower others to recognize their worth early, to fight for respect, and to build careers that reflected their true potential. These conversations were some of the most rewarding moments of my day, and I saw the impact they had on those around me. Watching others grow and flourish because they felt seen and supported was a powerful reminder of why I had left Holston in the first place. Though the scars from my previous workplace still lingered, they no longer defined me. I had reclaimed my professional identity and created a future shaped by respect, collaboration, and genuine leadership. The contrast between where I had been and where I was now couldn't be more stark, and I embraced the difference wholeheartedly. My journey had taught me that true leadership requires humility, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to valuing people above profits. It wasn't an easy lesson, but it was one I was now determined to pass on to others in every opportunity one got. Every success at the startup was a reminder that I was finally in control of my own narrative. No longer was I the overlooked employee hoping for recognition. I was a leader who commanded respect through actions and authenticity. The company's rapid growth and positive reputation were tangible proof that valuing people first is not just morally right, but also a smart business strategy. Clients responded enthusiastically to the culture we fostered, and employees thrived knowing their work mattered and their voices were heard. It was a far cry from the environment I had left behind, and every day I was grateful for the fresh start I had fought so hard to achieve. As I settled into this new chapter, I often reflected on the journey that brought me here, the struggles, the heartbreaks, and the moments of doubt that ultimately fueled my determination to walk away. Leaving Holston wasn't just an act of resignation. It was a declaration of self-worth and a commitment to build something better. The path wasn't easy, but it was worth every challenge because it led me to a place where I could truly thrive. The power dynamics had shifted, and I was no longer a pawn in someone else's game, but a player shaping the board. I knew this was only the beginning of a career defined by integrity, respect, and real leadership, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Just when I thought the dust had finally settled, an unexpected message arrived that shattered my newfound peace and cast a shadow over everything I had built. It came late one evening, the kind of cryptic email that immediately sends a chill down your spine. The sender was anonymous, but the words were clear. Something big was coming, something that could ruin the biggest client our company had ever signed. At first, I thought it was a prank or a desperate attempt to unsettle me, but the details were too specific, too damning to ignore. Someone was trying to sabotage us, to take down everything we had worked so hard to create. I spent the next few days digging through communications, project files, and financial reports, searching for anything that could confirm the warning. The more I looked, the more unsettling patterns I uncovered: fabricated documents, misleading emails, and false reports designed to create chaos within our ranks. Whoever was behind this had intimate knowledge of our operations and even access to conversations I thought were private. It felt like a betrayal from within, a deliberate attempt to undermine my leadership and the trust we had built with our clients. The timing couldn't have been worse, and the stakes were higher than ever. The suspicion gnawed at me, and I found myself questioning everyone around me, even those I thought I could trust without hesitation. Sarah, my closest ally during the company's growth, suddenly seemed distant, her answers vague and her loyalty uncertain. The thought that someone so close might be involved was devastating, but I knew I couldn't let personal feelings cloud my judgment. The company's future was on the line, and I had to get to the bottom of the sabotage before it spiraled completely out of control. It was a lonely battle, filled with doubt and second-guessing, but I refused to let fear dictate my actions. As the evidence mounted, I confronted Sarah, hoping for honesty and clarity, but her reaction only deepened the mystery. She denied any involvement but seemed shaken, as if hiding something far more complicated than I could understand. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and I realized that in the world of business, trust is fragile and easily broken. Every conversation felt like a test, every smile potentially masking hidden agendas. I had built a strong team, but this crisis threatened to tear it apart from within, and I had to find a way to hold it together despite the uncertainty. In the midst of the turmoil, I found solace in focusing on what I could control, strengthening our client relationships, tightening internal communications, and rallying the team around transparency and accountability. It was a race against time, and every decision carried weight far beyond the usual challenges. The pressure was relentless, but I reminded myself that resilience wasn't just about surviving setbacks. It was about adapting, learning, and leading through the darkest moments. I leaned into the lessons from my past, using them as a guide to navigate the present storm with clarity and courage. Then came the encrypted email, the final piece of the puzzle and the darkest threat yet. It arrived with a chilling deadline, demanding that I make a choice, comply with the demands, or watch everything fall apart. The message was filled with veiled threats and promises of exposure that could ruin reputations and destroy careers. I sat in my office late into the night, staring at the screen, the weight of the decision pressing down on me like a physical force. The future I had worked so hard to build suddenly seemed fragile and uncertain, hanging by a thread I couldn't quite grasp. I knew that whatever decision I made next wouldn't just affect me, but the entire team, the clients who trusted us, and the company's hard-won reputation. It was a moment of reckoning, a test of everything I stood for and everything I had become. The unexpected twist wasn't just the sabotage. It was the realization that even in moments of triumph, shadows can linger and threats can come from the most unexpected places. The story wasn't over, and the final chapter was yet to be written. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going down without a fight.